It's time to go beyond the headlines, cause I don't put in overtime just so I can headline. Okay, now it's Fox Sports, I'm live with Renee. Going hard every day, sports rapping every play. Different segments for your favorites, coming at you daily. With positive vibes, yeah, we some game changers. Basketball, football, soccer, with different interviews, you never know who may pop up. Listen, only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines. Only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines. Only on Beyond the Headlines, this is Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington.
All right. Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to another edition of Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington. I'm your host, Renee, and I'm very excited for this episode because the timing could not have been better. There's a lot of great things going on in sports right now, specifically in soccer, some major breaking news. So I am excited to have our very own guest, Jessie Bradley, on the show, former professional goalkeeper. We do also have a Spilling the Beans segment later with Michaela Williams, aka Michaela McNuff, bringing us the latest around some updates on COVID. So we've got a lot to get into today. So without further ado, let me bring on board my fellow former retired, washed up soccer player. That is professional goalkeeper Jessie Bradley, now Pastor Bradley. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you so much, Renee. I'm doing great. It's great to have a conversation with another soccer player. This doesn't happen too often on sports radio. But I also want to commend you for at the end of your career, even though you're saying we're over the hill, you are full of energy and passion and doing so many things well. So just congratulations on all your endeavors right now.
Well, thank you. I mean, if we keep the show going like this, you can just go. I don't have to say a word. I love the compliments. But in all seriousness, it's definitely something else, as you mentioned, about being over the hill, us retired soccer players. And just retired athletes in general, to have these types of conversations, to be able to share our journey, our experiences, and just kind of talk through it and looking back and reflect on it. So before we get into the work you're doing in ministry, I definitely have to talk about your career. You know, having the chance to play at a high level, that's something we all dream about. But it's never easy. And it did not happen overnight at the click, the click of a button or anything like that. So where did it all begin for you? You know, I know now you're in Seattle, you're still working the MLS, but take us back to young Jessie, aspiring to not only play soccer, but also be a goalkeeper, because as you and I know, and you more than me, having played it, it's a tough position and a tough sport. So take us through that decision to even play goalie and to play soccer at a young age.
Yeah, the dream started early. I was 3 years old. We lived on the campus, the University of Minnesota. So that's a shout out to the Golden Gophers and the Big Ten. I went to all their games and I told my parents I want to play professional sports when I get older. I played 3 sports in high school. Basketball was actually my passion and my first love. And the soccer coach saw me early on as a basketball player and thought I could convert him into a goalkeeper. And so I picked up that position, because you're right. You do have to be a little crazy to be a goalkeeper. You know, now I play the other 10 positions and having a lot of fun, getting a lot more exercise. But being a goalkeeper, it's a challenge. The mindset in soccer, there's not a lot of goals. So if you make a mistake, sometimes that means you lose the game. And then in high school, we just had great teams growing up, you know, a great coach. And then the guys I played with, Manny Lagos, you know, he's running Minnesota United right now. Tony Sana played in the World Cup. We won the high school tournament. It was in the Metrodome in Minnesota, 6,000 fans, you know, great memories. And that final game we won in a shootout, and that led to a D1, you know, opportunity for me at Dartmouth College. And I went out to the East Coast. I knew Dartmouth was strong academically. The soccer team, it was like a family. Bobby Clark was the coach then. He's now retired. He's won a national championship. He's coached. He's a legend in Scotland. He coached in New Zealand. Many countries. He really developed something special. And so often, sports teams, it's about the leader, the culture, and creating those relationships together. And when you're united together off the field, then working together on the field, there's synergy. You care about each other. You find your positions in your role. So we won the Ivy League title twice. We made it to the NCAA final. Elite Eight, we lost to Alexi Lawless in Rutgers, who now, of course, is on ESPN. But just a great time in college. Continue to have those friendships together. And then also played in Scotland, and then went overseas, played in Zimbabwe. And it was one of those opportunities where, because of coaches' connections, it was, you know, Queen's Park, Man U, Aberdeen, Zimbabwe. And that was a huge decision looking back. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to go to Africa. I learned so much in Africa. And that was also where my career tragically ended too. So that's a quick overview of some of my playing days. And I love being a goalkeeper. You know, the pressure sometimes was overwhelming. And as you move up each level, you know, you eat, drink, and sleep soccer at college, then you get to professionals and you realize, okay, now I've got a contract, and you feel that pressure. So there was a battle to continue to enjoy it. That same joy I had at age 3, you know, what does it look like to be a professional and not lose that joy? And there's a lot of distractions in sports, but I think at any age, it's a gift. If you're on a team, enjoy those relationships. That's what counts. When you look back, it's not the wins and losses, not that you remember every game, but the people you play with, the ability to play, you know, overseas, international friendships. There's just so many amazing things that come from playing sports.
Wow. So I love that trip down memory lane and like the Spark Notes version of your career, and being able to share some of the highlights and major decisions that you had to make. I definitely could have picked up on being a basketball player transitioning into soccer, because I do feel like, I mean, I played basketball myself growing up. I feel like a lot of soccer players play, obviously just other sports in general, but like basketball, lacrosse, they tend to translate a lot easier into being a soccer player, especially as a goalkeeper. So that makes complete sense to me. But what I also liked about what you shared is just the different opportunities that came through playing soccer, you know, being able to play professionally in a variety of different countries. As you mentioned, playing in Africa and Zimbabwe, playing in Scotland, playing in the United States, playing all over, just having the chance to play the game you love and do what you love, but also being able to see the world with that too. So a question that I actually am curious to know about you is, as you talk about the pressure of being a goalkeeper, I want to go back to that really quickly. There's pressure in any sports space, you know, regardless what your position is. But I agree, as a goalkeeper, and I felt this as a goal scorer, when your team doesn't win, it's on you in that sense. And people put it's not literally on you, but people like to put that blame on you. Oh, the keeper should have did this, or you could have had that, or whatever it may be. There is some pressure that comes from that, because the goal goes through you at the end. Although you and I know it takes 11 players for it to get in the back of the net on either end of the field, but there is that pressure. So talk to me about the mentality of not only being able to work through the pressure as a goalie with saving shots, but even the pressure of you're flying out at guys who are coming at you, cleats up, you know, full speed ahead, trying to do any and everything they could to get the ball around you. Just that pressure too, and the mentality that you had to develop to be able to be a high-level goalie.
Yeah, at Dartmouth, I was a psychology major. So sports and psychology, they fit together. I did an independent project studying some of the teams and talking to the athletes. And when it comes to performance, you see an arc that if you don't have enough drive, if you don't have enough focus, if you're not into the game, then you're not going to perform well. But on the other hand, if you're putting too much pressure on yourself and you're actually trying too hard, kind of white knuckle forcing things, you're not in the flow and you're not relaxed, and it can slow you down. And that sweet spot where you try to land in the middle, where you don't take yourself too seriously, but at the same time, you're so prepared for the match. Some personal struggles for me, or at least battles, I guess, would to not overthink the situation. I tend to be analytical. And if I get too caught up in my head and I overanalyze, I think too hard, you know, it just slows me down. And that's not helpful as a goalkeeper. Also, another thing I had to learn how to do is forget past mistakes. Because if you make a mistake and you wear it and you let that affect your next reaction, and then you lose your confidence, you just can't go down that road. It's a downward spiral. So everyone's going to make mistakes. How are you going to respond to those mistakes? And I remember one of my coaches taught me early on, if you make a mistake, just get hungry right away for that exact same situation, because you learn from it, and let's bring it on. Let's do it a second time. You know, the first time we played in our championship in the Metrodome, I was scared, to be honest. And we won the game 3-1, but I was timid. And that doesn't work well in any sports competition, to be timid, to be kind of afraid of the situation. But I was, the crowd, the Metrodome, I'd never been in that situation before. And I learned from that. Even though we won, I learned if I ever get back there, I'm going to have a different mindset. In my senior year, I wasn't scared. I was ready, and I was aggressive, and I was going to go for it and not hold back in any way. And it turned out we won a shootout. So you get opportunities in life and also sports where you go through a scenario, okay, you make mistakes, but don't sit in guilt. Don't sit in shame. Don't keep replaying all the old tapes of the mistake. Instead, you just acknowledge, yeah, I learned from that. And now let's look forward to the next opportunity. And those were some keys for me as a goalkeeper, to stay relaxed, to not dwell on past mistakes and try to stay in that zone where I'm going to perform best. And for me, that usually meant trying to reel it back a little bit because I was amped going into the games. And I just knew, okay, just keep, telling jokes for the game, whatever it is, just to keep it light enough for me. So I'm in that sweet spot.
I like that because I agree. I feel like a lot of goalies naturally are amped up. You have to be you have to more than a lot of other positions, just be focused. And the focus, as you mentioned, is different. It's not overthinking. It's not getting caught up. It's understanding where you are right now. So when you're in the moment as a player, and I always tell people this, when I was the best moments I had, the best goals I had, those best highlights, when I look back, I'm like, I don't even know why I did that. I don't know why I shot that. I don't know why I made that move. And I'm sure you have some of those things when you look back. Maybe it's in the shootout of a championship or just a regular play through the game where you're like, why did I do that? I have no idea what made me decide to pick right and guess correctly on that PK. So that is incredible in itself when you think about when you're just in the moment. And I like this comment that Mike Patton is saying of this is not just for soccer, but it is for life. When you're going through life, overthinking every single step and move you're making, you're overly analytical about everything you're doing. You're your biggest critic in that sense, which is a blessing and a curse. But you find yourself tripping up on what you should and shouldn't be doing versus just getting after it, doing what you're supposed to do, doing what you love. And when you have that repetition and you put in the work and the practice, you can just do without thinking.
That's right.
You also mentioned, and I know I did see you were a psych major. I was a psych minor. We have a lot in common here. You went to Dartmouth. I was not an Ivy League student, but I do work in the Ivy League now as a reporter. So there's some connections there. But I also want to get into, as you talked about your experiences, winning, being a part of championships, being a part of NCAA tournaments, being at the highest level. What's a memorable, defining moment for you? We have a lot of memorable moments. Those moments you look back and like, that was great. But what's a defining moment for you in your career that you look back on that you realized you learned, you grew in some way because of that moment?
My freshman year at Dartmouth, showing up, there's 3 other goalkeepers in that process of trying to earn that starting spot. And then to see our team, we hadn't won the Ivy League in 25 years. And I think sometimes the breakthrough is the sweetest moment. Because when there's a barrier that's been there for decades and the team hasn't been able to break through, and to see, the joy for us, it was at Brown, clinching, coming back on the bus ride. I mean, I'll never forget one of the guys wrote a poem, to pump us up for the game. And it was like, Hendo's wrote this poem, but you just feel this camaraderie and the laughter, the joy coming off the bus on the way home and just kind of running around campus. And we were just like, couldn't wait to get back and see our friends and just celebrate the Ivy League title. That was huge. And to just feel like we've done this together. Soccer really is a team sport. And then my junior year, making it to the NCAAs, beating some of our rivals, making it to the Final 8. It's something that we look back upon and we just still talk about the games. We're on Zoom, during COVID, we're all on Zoom as a team together. And when you taste those victories and you know how far you come and you know how hard you had to work to get there, there's a bond in the sacrifice that comes and there's a bond in the process even before the final result. And I think it's important to enjoy the process and enjoy the teammates as you continue. I remember that contract of just, wow, and now I'm a professional. I've got a contract. I'm playing. And in the stadiums, the competition increases. I mean, each level, whether you're in business, I mean, there are demands, there's sacrifices. You have to up your game. And, for me as a goalkeeper, it meant it was going to be more people heckling, right? So that would increase and I couldn't let them get in my head. Or the courage. I mean, it's one thing in high school to dive at someone's feet and take the ball, but when someone that's a professional is coming at you and you're just you can't have any fear. You got to go all out. Those are, some of those breakthroughs. And I think for me, the friendships internationally are just so special. I feel like our world needs to come together. We need to love people in all nations. Like there's not one group of people that's above another group. In fact, we learn so much from each other and we gain so much. So living in Africa and learning from the people there, I had never experienced poverty or drought, AIDS, never seen it like that. And, that broke my heart. And yet I saw people who were singing. I saw people who had hope, who persevered. I saw people who were generous and hospitable. And I was thinking, how could people here in Bulawayo be so generous when they have so little? And then I think in America, we have so much. And sometimes we don't even know our neighbors, or we're not quick to help someone, or we're not just going to give away possessions to someone in need. And they taught me so much. And so those friendships and what you learn overseas, I wouldn't trade that, for anything. You can't learn that in the classroom. You've got to go and be in that to experience it.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And you said a lot of defining moments there. I know I said pick one, though, Jesse.
I'll give you a short answer for the next question. I took some of the time for the next question and just borrowed it a little bit. Yeah.
No, but it is the truth. It's that eye-opening moment. I mean, you've had many of those defining moments. It is hard to pick just one. There is way more than just one that you can pick of those defining moments that really helped you have a better grasp of who you are, the perspective of the rest of the world. As you mentioned, when you're in another country, if you're in a place like Zimbabwe and you're seeing people that have nothing, yet they are the happiest, most selfless people compared to some that, as you mentioned, on the other hand, maybe have quote unquote it all. So, I think that perspective that you're sharing of just the different chapters in your life and what they each taught you and how you learned and grew are defining moments in their own way, and those stepping stones to help you. And if I didn't know any better, I'd say you're preaching right now, but I know that's what you do. Preaching some good things here. But I do want to ask you something that jumped out at me when you said the transition of high school to college to pros, when you're now coming out as a goalkeeper, going against some of the best opponents. Who is that player that maybe, I won't say had you starstruck or nervous, because that doesn't happen to us.
Right.
But maybe had you taken back, wait a minute, this is happening right now. I'm going up against who?
Yeah. Right. When I got to Aberdeen, there were guys that played in the World Cup, Hans Hillhouse. When you watch someone play and they're an internationally known player, they're outstanding. This goalkeeper, Theo Snelders, you see people play in the top clubs, you see them play internationally at the highest level. And it's one thing to watch them on TV, but then when you're in the locker room with them, they're on your team, or you get to know them and you're in training together. And it's like, wow, now you're just sitting down at lunch and talking. And then you get to know a whole side of them that's off the field. And I think for me, being in Aberdeen, and just Scotland has such a legacy when it comes to soccer. And there's so much passion that being in that environment and playing with international players, I was learning so much. The coach said, just basically do whatever Theo does. And I was like, yes, sir, that's great advice. I'll just do whatever he does. And to have role models like that as a young player, that meant the world to me. And so I'd say, especially overseas, at the time, there weren't as many well-known American soccer players that I looked up to. So it was overseas. And to actually meet them, it's a dream come true. I loved it.
And that does say a lot about just the growth and changes we've seen in soccer, because I agree. I feel like growing up, especially on the men's side, and there are some household names on the men's side in soccer. You think of Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, Messi, who we'll talk about shortly, that are household names that live in other parts of the world. We are now seeing that change where more and more kids do have players in their own backyard they can look up to and rock their jerseys on the men's and women's side in soccer. And that is so important, to be able to have those role models you look up to that, you can aspire to want to be like one day. But I do want to get into Messi because the news, and I feel like, again, perfect timing. Everything happens for a reason. As I was going throughout the day and I saw that Messi was in Paris, I was like, oh, okay. Obviously, we heard the news that Messi was not going to be returning to Barcelona. They could not afford to keep him on the team. As we all know, COVID has had several impacts on our world, especially financially as well. So that is something that was not a surprise to me, but was, of course, still a surprise to me, because after all these years, to think of Messi not playing in Barcelona, what? So then the question is, where will he go next? So we get the breaking news today, he's in Paris, and then we get the even bigger breaking news. He's joining an incredibly already talented PSG team to play with players like Mbappe, Neymar, and Sergio Ramos. And I've got to get your initial thoughts when you saw this news break.
You probably got some people listening who aren't as familiar with soccer. So PSG isn't going to be an acronym that they're throwing around. So, the parallel might be going back to the Miami Heat. as LeBron, takes his talents down to South Beach, and you've got Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh there. I mean, bringing these three together, Messi to take his talents to France. Are you kidding me? Like, this is stacked. Like, if you're in that league, you're just gonna wait for an injury or maybe some internal fighting. But in terms of talent, like, it's a runaway. And there hasn't been, especially, I mean, Renee, you played up front. You know what it's like on the attack. If I was a goalkeeper going against those three, I'm like, can we find some more money for our defense and invest in some more defenders? Because it's going to be amazing. There's going to be so much attention drawn to them. And I feel, I'm grateful that Messi was able to win in Argentina. They just beat Brazil in the Copa America. So that was a huge breakthrough for him personally. So I think some pressure will actually be off him because of that accomplishment. And I think he's in a season in his life where he'll just enjoy it as well. You have yet Argentinian, and then you also have a Brazilian coming together in the attack with Neymar. But I think they're going to work it out. And, you mentioned for men's soccer, I'm thrilled that the U.S. is developing so many more players who are playing professionally at the top levels now and at young ages. It bodes so well for us, coming off the big Gold Cup victory. But the women have been at the top for a long time. And I think it's the other nations that have looked to the American players on the women's side because we have so many outstanding teams that have done so well. And so I feel like the men are trying to catch up internationally on that top level where the women have been the team to catch. And hopefully the women can stay ahead. I know there's a lot of strong teams right now in leagues for the women. It's great to see women's soccer developed. I mean, we just want to see the fullness of both the men and the women in our country. And I think we're making huge steps in that direction. I see more kids playing, just in the playgrounds. The coaching is better. MLS is better. I mean, the best athletes aren't going to all the other sports. We're really seeing a lot of progress. And it's going to be fun, though. Going back to your question, it's going to be fun to watch. I usually watch the English league. That's probably my go-to. But I think I'm going to be watching more from France this year.
Yeah, I think so. It is just insane. That's a good comparison of, when LeBron took his talents to South Beach. I like that because it is, I said it was a cheat code. It's like if you're playing FIFA, when you are playing FIFA and you put all the best players in the team because you want to see all the best players play together. This is what we're seeing in real life. It's happening. So I think when I first read it, I was like, maybe he's just in Paris, just visiting. There's no way this is actually going to happen. There's no way they're going to pull this off. And they did. So it's a majorly talented group that is going to be fun to watch. I'm just excited to see how they all gel together. I mean, he's played with players like Neymar before. Obviously, him and Ramos have that history too on the other side. But, it's exciting because it's something to your point, just to look forward to. More great soccer. Now we get to see, okay, how are other teams going to try to adjust defensively? I don't know how you do to slow them down. But to your point about like the U.S. men winning Copa America, we've got them, and even they fell to bronze, which is, underperforming in what their expectations were. They still have been at the top of women's soccer for years now. So it's great to see on the men's side that they're also catching up, and to see, the MLS is doing well. Obviously, the Union are now going down to CONCACAF to compete to the semifinals. It's exciting. It's exciting for soccer. But I do want to ask your thoughts on having seen the game as a player to where it's evolved to now, being still involved in the MLS, working with the Sounders in a different role now. What are you seeing behind the scenes that's really going into helping grow the game, not only get more access to be able to reach more communities, but also to just continue to empower and educate other kids that soccer is a sport that's worth looking into playing and should be one of your favorite sports to watch, just like every other sport?
Yes, we have 4 children and they're all playing soccer. I would say that one of them has a deep passion for it. The other 3 are probably just enjoying it. But it's one of those sports that, doesn't require a lot of money. So I love that the playing field is even, every nation. I mean, when I was overseas, kids would even just wrap together plastic and recycle it and make a ball and then play in bare feet. I mean, it's played around the world. It's the #1 sport. And in America, it's taken some time to really get some traction and some momentum. But what you see right now, the level of play just continues to increase. I'm involved. My coach in college, Bobby Clark, his son is here at UW. Jamie Clark is his name. He's the coach, and the team is outstanding. They've been finishing, in the top 8 in the country. It's fun to take my kids, and they get to see those pictures. And what happens when you get to see the high levels, then you get the pictures in your mind. Then you practice it at home, and then you aspire to it, and you see what it takes and what's required. And the more the programs we have in college, the stronger they are, the stronger, around the nation. There's so many good youth programs now, and I see it on all levels. Sounders. I mean, there's a level of play where there's an awareness. When MLS, no offense here to the Pioneer MLS, really great, but sometimes it just felt like kind of pinball. Like there's a little indoor action going on, and it was kind of like kick it and strong and run. And now you just see the intelligence of the runs. You see the nuances of the touches. You see the teamwork, and it's now a league where it's like it's exciting to go and bring young kids and say, look what they're doing out there. And I feel like across the board, everything's heading in the right direction. And so let's not mess it up. I'm grateful for the people that have just, I think of heroes really in terms of soccer, the last 20 years that, started out. And I remember when I started playing, we would pile, no seatbelts, we would pile 10 people in the back of a station wagon, and there'd be one person who'd pick everyone up and we'd take us to the game. And, now there's so much more. I mean, the clubs are so much more developed, the uniforms and everything, but it's not about the outward stuff. It's the passion for the game. It's playing it far beyond just the practices. And it's really a culture right now where America has more of a soccer culture. And also, I think some of the people coming from other countries bring that passion and some of that expertise, and that blends together, which is beautiful. I mean, it's the beautiful game. And when you see the influence, the different styles around the world, and what we can learn from each one, and the American style, I mean, we started out with strong goalkeepers because we just, athletic, going back to Tony Meola and Brad Friedel, and, there was a lot of them, but we're far beyond just goalkeepers and defense. Now we've got attacking players, and I just feel like across the board, the bar keeps getting raised, and I'm excited for this next generation. I think, the sky is the limit for where this could go. And it's in Seattle, we have the second most people attending games, about 45,000 a game. And so in this city right here, there is a buzz. I mean, I still play in a men's league, and it's just fun on all levels. This competitive and the friendships you build. It's one of those games that I think you can keep playing for a long time in life as well. And I just look forward to play with my kids and hopefully my grandkids someday.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I agree. I do feel like we're finally seeing the growth, the progression of, especially the MLS. It's hard because a lot of people, and you get this, and I understand this, but they don't really realize all that the MLS is competing against. When you look at the NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball, the NHL, other sports, the NWSL, they usually are the reigning league where the best players are in that league. Whereas the MLS has been playing catch up with the Premier League and all these other leagues, Champions League, that they're trying to keep up with to be able to compete. So you don't always have the best players in soccer in the MLS, but it's still a fun brand of soccer to watch. And as you mentioned, it is evolving. We're seeing much more, tactically, technically to develop the game. But I love the point that you make about just being able to continue playing, staying invested in the game, whether it's playing in the men's league or now having the opportunity to work with your kids to have them involved in the game. And you are involved in the MLS, but just in a different capacity. And I love that journey that I was able to look into. And I'd love to hear you share it with everybody else of transitioning from being a goalkeeper and now being a pastor. And as you mentioned before the show, you did not grow up in an overly religious household where you were in church 7 days a week or anything like that. It wasn't until college that you were truly exposed to and started, getting into more spiritually. So I am curious for, what made you make that switch? That I'm a very religious person myself, but to make that decision that I'm going to take this a step further. It's not enough to read the word. I'm going to continue to study it. And I'm also going to preach the word. And I'm going to have family and faith nights at Seattle and everything. What was that switch for you to take it a step further to become pastor, Jesse Bradley?
Yeah, thank you, Renee. When it comes to the American system with soccer, one of the strengths is that college soccer is outstanding. And in other countries, when I lived like in Scotland, they didn't have the academics and the athletics together. And so I was able to enjoy both. And then there was this part of my life spiritually where I never really considered much going into college. My family, kind of like Baskin Robbins, 31 flavors, a little bit of everything from Catholic, ex-Catholic, rabbi, Jewish, atheist, agnostic. I didn't believe God existed. And I took a class, it was the Introduction to World Religions, read the Bible for the first time, started to learn about Jesus for the first time. And I was just so intrigued. I had so many questions. I started to kick the tires because I'm like, if I'm going to believe, there needs to be some facts here, there needs to be some evidence. And so I took it kind of from that cognitive academic approach, like what's the evidence? Is Jesus real? Is he risen? And asked all those questions. And then when I made that decision, sometimes in life, you got beyond the headlines. And there's an outside story and an inside story. And a lot of times on social media, we project a certain way, or in sports, we project a certain way, but on the inside, something was missing. And when I discovered a relationship with God, it's based on grace. You don't have to earn it. So much of my life was performance and achievement and earning, academics, athletics. And this was like a love and a gift that I never had before. And I just had so much joy when I experienced that relationship. And I didn't expect to be a pastor, but in Africa, I took a preventative medication to really protect me from malaria. It was called Larium, and it built up toxic levels in my system. And that's what ended up ending my career. I was fighting for my life for a year. It took 10 years to recover. And during that time, that's when I really, discovered what's after soccer. And, I commend you because you've made that transition so well. And you're, a communicator and in business. And I see you on like football games, not just soccer and Ivy League. And, you're doing so many great things, but I was in a spot where I felt kind of hopeless. I didn't know what to do next. And out of that, the foundation of my life started to change. Instead of my performance based, I realized who I am and that I'm loved. And my mindset started to change. I'm grateful for each day, thankful. I just started serving people. And sometimes pain will lead to your greatest passion. And because I knew what it was like to be fighting for my life physically, and I knew what it was like to not have hope, a passion grew for me to spread hope, to meet needs, to strengthen communities, to strengthen families, to help people discover spiritually, a foundation for their lives. And I just wanted to serve people in that way. And the same passion I had with training for, being a goalkeeper, I just found that the passion, it even increased because at the end of the day, it's great to win a game or a championship, but how much more meaningful, like when lives are changed locally and globally. And I found that pastor's a role for me where I get to have an impact and I get to be part of teams and I get to see, neighborhoods, communities change. And there's so many ways to express that, whether it's teaching and friendship, or during COVID, there's a team that's been raised up and they've handed out over 15 million pounds of food. There's another team that's drive-through prayer. And there's people that just pull into our parking lot. They've got cancer, they're in tears, they're lonely, and they just want someone to care for them. And there's so many things you can do. This weekend, we've got 8 churches coming together to serve our city, cleaning up the city and doing lots of different projects and painting. And there's practical ways to live out your faith. Faith might sound kind of nebulous, but I go back to, it's a relationship, and then you live it out, and it's in your relationships. You love other people. And if you truly have a faith in God, a relationship with God, you're going to receive love. And then that's so important because we need to, United States of America, we need to unite. We need a greater love, a greater unity. And for me, it's just my story. And I know there's a wide range of people watching with different viewpoints and beliefs. And I want to be respectful for everyone. But for me, Jesus has changed the way I see people and see the world, and has created a passion to serve people and build those friendships. And I love what I'm doing right now. I really do.
I love it. And I can hear that. I can feel that passion as you're talking because, that's, as you mentioned, it was through a major circumstance. I didn't even know that happened to you. That's almost doesn't even seem like a real story, but you're like, what I like about it, the surrealness of it, is the fact that faith is not something that, as much as we study and read, that happens in a way that makes sense. When I think about the moments that have defined and strengthened my faith, it is those moments that you are just, forced to, in that moment, nothing else makes sense around you. Medical decisions, the doctors, the banks, whatever it is, what they're saying is one thing, but what you're seeing is a whole different thing. What changes for you is a whole different thing because of your faith. And that is having the ability to believe in what you can't see, believe in what can't be read or put into, always makes sense. And so, it is incredible to hear about the way that your faith has grown over the years to now allow you to be part of in your community something greater than yourself, you know? And again, like you said, like we're not pushing any religion, anything specific to anybody that's listening, but it is just understanding your purpose. That is something, regardless of what you believe in religiously, we all have to figure out our gifts, our purpose, and what we can use our talents to help provide and grow within our communities and, you know, with people around us. So, you know, for you getting to be a part of the Seattle Sounders in a very unique way now, where you're leading, is it faith and family or family and faith? I wrote it down like 50 times,
right.
and I feel like I faith and family nights.
Family, you got it. You got it.
Okay. You know, how did that even come about? Because as we talked about before, there is more right now. I feel like the blurring of lines. There used to be this very structured belief that sports are here, politics are here, religion's over here, and they don't intersect in any way, even though we sing the national anthem and we have the flags waving and we had military personnel at games, yet we still like to, or some still like to believe there is no intersection. So to be in the MLS holding these religious conversations, how did that come about? And share a little bit more about exactly what it is as well.
Yeah, personally, I remember when I prayed for the first time, even before a game, you know, that I have quick reflexes, that, you know, my mind would be sharp, and it just calmed me. And I could see early on for me that intersection between faith and football and the difference it made going into games and just being ready to dive into the action in just a really healthy mindset. And then through the years, we started FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes at Dartmouth. And I just always loved working with different athletes. When I served as a college pastor, University of Iowa, there were football players there. You know, Aaron Campman was there, who went on to play for the Packers, Dallas Clark. I mean, and so many of the teams right now professionally have chaplains and full-time chaplains too. And you see that in sport because I think franchises and organizations, they realize that we're not just intellectual, we're not just physical, not just emotional, not just relational, but we have a spiritual component. And in fact, what happens spiritually so often touches every part of life. And so teams value this chaplaincy, this comfort, this encouragement, and to provide food for whoever wants it, you know, spiritually, to grow in that area of their life as an opportunity for development. And when it comes to the Sounders, a lot of it just came out of relationship. So many things in life come out of relationship and just come out of trust. And as you get to know people, you discover opportunity for collaboration. I love that word collaboration, because it's like, how can we bring the best out for each other and then help other people? When you have a mindset of how can we make this better? What could we offer together? I think that's where some of the best partnerships, that's where some of the best ideas come. And it was something we started new, where faith and family night, there's a lot of people in our community that faith is an important part of their lives. Families can come together, have a great time at the soccer game, hear an encouraging or inspiring message, and combine it. You know, a player, someone like myself who was a player and a pastor, a current player, bring that together. And so I'm grateful for, you know, the Sounders. Of course, I'm not going to talk about all the rings they're winning right now and the championships. I won't talk about the record. I won't talk about, you know, all the great players. But in addition to all that, go Sounders. We welcome you if you're looking for a team in the MLS to get behind. It's been a lot of fun. COVID's thrown some wrinkles in there. We're still hoping, you know, we could do it this year, but it's really best, you know, when stadiums open and we can dive into it fully. So one step at a time with COVID, but we're hoping to have another one soon. If we can't get in this year, we'll go to next year. But it's that panel too. We want to bring in a college player and just show that range again, so that young kids can see, like, all right, here's a college player, here's a professional player, and get to know the players behind the scenes, off the field. What's really important to them? What really drives them? How does faith strengthen them, just in terms of their life, their families? If they've had a tough game, how do they bounce back? And I love painting that full picture, because I think that it's all the areas of our life. When we really kind of maximize our potential in all the areas, that's when we come most alive. And I like to talk about, you know, areas of psychology or areas of spirituality, because you don't always hear about those in the classroom. And you can have a great career, or you can have great schooling and great professors. But sometimes the most important things in life are not what you can take to the laboratory. And love is the greatest. And yet, you know, you can't really measure that in a lab. You can't just like prove it, but it's so real. You know, hope is so real. 48% of Americans during the pandemic said they feel hopeless. You know, how can we find and spread hope? How can we build each other up? Faith is another one where there's evidence, there's history, there's facts, but there's still going to be that step of faith too. So I like, walking through those realms. And for a lot of people, they just need a safe place to ask questions, to talk, to think through it. They just need a place that's not judgmental, it's not harsh. We can just share freely and just be real, kind of be raw in those ways. And a lot of people, they're thinking deeply, they're feeling deeply about those things, but they just don't know where to go, or they're not sure what their next step is. And I love to just come alongside of people and just share, what I've experienced and learned, and just hear what they're looking for too.
Yeah, that's miraculous. I mean, when you think about, as you mentioned, just the change that there's more and more conversations in the locker room with teams, specifically for the Sounders. I like your shameless plug about the Sounders. It's perfectly fine. We all saw the Sounders win time and time again. There's some other teams that are working to win the MLS Cup too. But, as you mentioned, it is the ability to have these conversations, whether it's with families at Faith and Family Night or within the community, to be able to discuss, religion and discuss these topics, because it is something that, as you mentioned, there are a lot of people, especially around the pandemic, that are seeking that. It has been challenging mentally, financially, emotionally, physically. We have all been impacted in some way. So now more than ever, there's the value of being able to have these safe spaces where you can talk through what you're feeling and what's going on. So for you making that transition into ministry, into being a pastor and working, to help keep the conversation going in a unique way, what is something that you've really seen as maybe like in that moment, that verification and that validation that this is what you're supposed to be doing? Because I think that's something a lot of people struggle with when you are seeking your purpose. How do you know? Like, we're all looking for the sign. How do you know this is what I'm supposed to be doing? This is where I'm supposed to be. So what helped you, that validity of knowing, what, this is it. This is that next step for me. This is that next chapter.
Right on. You have to take some risks. You have to step out of your comfort zone. You're going to try some new things. It's hard to steer a parked car. So you got to start moving. Find a mentor. Think about, what is it that energizes you? What do you wake up excited to do? Start serving there. It's usually going to involve using your talents, serving other people, and lives are changed. And the fact is, we need each other. And we've seen this during the pandemic. We truly need each other. Sociologists look at our culture and they say, we're one of the most kind of individual focused. We're one of the most lonely. We're one of the most self-consumed cultures. And it's like, how can we even get to know our neighbors? We had something this week in our neighborhood. We were 115 homes, and we gathered together at a park, and we just spent time getting to know our neighbors. I mean, that might sound so basic, but it's so rare. So often we don't know who's living 5 houses down or 4 apartments over. And to get to know the people around you. I mean, that was one thing that happened during COVID, is we saw it with kids in our neighborhood, about 20 kids. It just started because kids need each other. They can't just be so isolated. And then, families getting to know each other, and the friendships that were built in the last year. And I think, what if we have more block parties? What if we served each other more? What if we support each other? And I grew up in Minnesota, and it's so cold in the winter. You've got to look out for each other. If there's a car in a ditch, you stop and you help them out. And I like that mindset. We don't need to wait for a pandemic or an extreme situation. We can live with that kind of generosity and hospitality that I saw in Zimbabwe. In terms of discovery, what I've noticed is that for me, there's going to be something bigger than me. In other words, you're going to go after a cause or a dream that you can't just do in your own strength or really quickly. Like, you're going to go after something pretty big. And there's a sense of like almost compulsion in a good way. Like, I need to do this. And there's also incredible joy. And that combination for me existed. I think when you're in your zone and you're using your gifts, you're going to see lives change. You're going to see people respond, and they're going to say, thank you for saying that. Wow, you're gifted at that. They're going to affirm you. The people who know you well are going to say, yes, you're made for this. I see this. This is your purpose. And when you connect passion and purpose, that's powerful. And it could start out as a hobby or volunteering. It might turn into a side hustle or part-time. It might end up being your full-time work. It's a blessing when what you do full-time is also what you're passionate about. And, here's another way of saying it. If money was not an issue, what would you do? Like, if someone gave you $100 million, you didn't have to think about money, right? What would you go do? Or looking back, let's say it's the end of your life. What do you want to be said true about your life and how you lived and what you did. What's the impact you desire? And I think all of us know deep down that the ultimate satisfaction is not going to come from having the biggest house and the biggest bank account and all the cool stuff, but it's going to come from relationships, and it's actually going to come from serving. And when you serve and you're able to help other people, that's going to be most fulfilling. But when that intersection happens where it's people's needs and then also what you're designed to bring, and I don't think you're just put together by accident. I mean, you're unique, you're special. There's no one just like you. And so don't try to imitate and just copy someone else. You can learn from people like a mentor, but ultimately you got to get comfortable in your skin and not insecure, not in fear, not in comparison or even competition, but be comfortable and know who you are, that self-awareness, and then live that out. There's always going to be some people who twist, misunderstand, criticize you. That's going to come with it. And oftentimes the more success or the more people you can help, the more you start to thrive. There's an old saying that, bugs are attracted to light. I saw that all the time in Minnesota. The bugs go to light. There's going to be some haters are going to throw some shade. Don't give them too much power and just keep going with the direction that you're going. That, again, it's noble, it's good, and you wake up excited to do it, and you're just seeing lives changed. And for me, it was a prayerful decision. It was one step at a time. But really, the greatest things in life are often not what you plan and not what you see coming. I couldn't decide, I'm going to meet my wife at this age, at this place. Like, I couldn't control that. Or I never thought I'd be a pastor. But now I realize, it's even more fulfilling than being a soccer player, as good as that was. And I loved it and I miss it. But there was more in me than just on the field, and I discovered it. So you might not know what's coming, and sometimes it might come out of pain. For me, soccer was suddenly gone. I didn't get to decide the end of my career, and now life's going a different way, and I've got to figure that out and rebuilding my life, and especially coming out of that illness too. So just know that in painful times, C.S. Lewis says, that's often a megaphone to rouse a deaf world. It's in the painful times that we get raw, we get honest, we kind of take inventory and discover new direction, and then just keep building on those islands of strength.
Mic drop. I got you going, and I love it because you're saying things. And look, I fully understand that for you, you are a pastor. But everything you're saying translates across whether it's religious, professionally, personally. It translates across so many different aspects of our daily lives. Of what you're saying is the fact that the core of it is knowing where you are, being okay with that, figuring out your purpose. As you mentioned, doesn't happen by someone dropping in like this great sign from wherever. I think people think it's supposed to come from, of like, this is the job you're supposed to have. This is the career you're supposed to have. This is the person you're supposed to marry. It doesn't happen that way. We have to, as we're evolving and learning about ourselves, we're figuring out what we like, what we don't like. We're figuring out what makes us get out of bed in the morning. What excites you? What do you look forward to doing? And then even that reciprocity of like other people saying, hey, this has inspired me in some way, or thank you. That is something that I always tell people is what helped me as a sports reporter know this was something I enjoy doing. When you have people that are coming to you saying that your interview, your story, your conversation in some way uplifted them and inspired them, that's such a great feeling. But that's not everybody's passion in the same way. So I think it is, as you're mentioning, figuring out what makes you tick. What is it about you and not other people, not social media, not anything else we try to get validation from. At your core, who are you? Yeah. What do you enjoy? What do you want to be doing? So that you can make sure you're pursuing things that make you happy, and that you'll be able to, tap into all these areas that you enjoy. So I definitely want to ask, I feel like you've already said so many great nuggets, but as we wrap up here, I definitely have to ask, through all of your experiences, you talk about your career suddenly coming to an end, your illness that you worked through, making that transition, not knowing what was next for you, and then getting into ministry as a pastor, getting to get back into, getting into the MLS. What is that advice that you would share that you've learned throughout the course of all this in your life so far? That biggest piece of information that you wish somebody maybe had told you that you can share with those listening? Right on.
That road is going to include grit, grind, sacrifice. Championships, all that goes into it. And it's not always going to be the easiest path. It's the best path. And so there might be a high cost, but it's going to be worth it. What I found, it's a simple picture, but kind of like the candle, you know, those trick candles that you blow them out and they keep coming back. And what I find is when I'm in alignment with God, for me, you know, God's my North Star. He's the one I'm looking to. That there's this passion and fire that is greater than the challenges. And even though, you know, I might be fighting for my life, or, you know, I had side effects that included panic attacks and depression, and, you know, feel like I'm fighting for my sanity through that healing process, that there was this fire that just kept going. And for me, that fire is love, it's relationship, and it starts from the love I receive. You know, what I had to learn as an athlete, I was always trying to present well, put my best foot forward. But what I had to learn is that I'm loved even at my ugliest, and I'm loved at my failure. And when I'm loved at those places, then there's a security there, because I don't have to earn or perform or achieve or sustain a love. There's a love that produces a fire in me, and it starts with receiving it. And oftentimes that receiving is in weakness. I've learned that I'm not self-sufficient. I need other people. And I would say I need God's help. You know, that's part of my faith. And when I discovered source greater than just my own effort, I mean, that's when I really felt empowered. Yes, I want to use all my talents to the full. Yes, I want to be alive. And, you know, yes, I want to be given my all. But I'm not just relying on myself. And there's a love. I think nothing motivates or changes our lives like love and like grace. And receiving is a big deal. You can't just be given all the time. It's receiving love from other people is a big deal. And I think it's important. We serve one another. We say we love each other. It's going to be love that brings healing in America. You know, I just picked so many different topics, but if I just picked like racial reconciliation, when it's close to my heart, it's going to be love. It includes forgiveness. It includes understanding. It includes serving. It includes friendship. It's going to happen in the home. It's going to happen in the heart. It's not going to be a law. And we want to experience that love. And I think we can't wait. We can't be passive and timid and wait for other people to take the action and figure it out. Like, we've got to start where we are and do what we can in our communities, and in our friendships, in our families, and start to live that. It's easy to criticize. Anyone can criticize, but who could, you know, inspire, set an example, live it out. And that's what we need to step up and do together. And I've just found when I'm close with God, I just feel that fire that burns in there. And ultimately, it's about loving relationships. There's nothing more important in life in relationships. The quality of relationships is the quality of your life. And I mean, I'm someone who takes mountains and loves to get after stuff, but it really does come down to relationships and love.
Start where you are. And that was something that just jumped out at me. Like, I feel like it really jumped out at me, because it's, as you're mentioning, just understand that at the core of wherever you are, as you're saying, you are still loved. You know, and that's the concept I always say, like, planted not buried, of that mindset that I brought forward with one of my initiatives. But understanding that, like, despite what may be going on, despite what may seem like it's all going wrong or not going your way, or that you're struggling with, or on the other side that you're persevering through, or that you're succeeding in, nothing changes at the core of where you are. You know, you are loved, you are gifted, you are working towards something, you are making things happen, regardless what it may look like in front of you. When you look back, it's a lot different now than wherever you were then. So just even understanding and being able to be, you know, mindful and have that perspective that, you know, you are moving along one step at a time. You look back a week ago, a month ago, 3 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it may be, to where you are now is a huge difference. And there's a lot of growth that happens in small ways as well as those larger ways. So I appreciate you taking time to join us, because I can feel that you're just oozing with passion, encouragement, great advice, great words of wisdom, but also just experience, you know, that you've been through things. And I can sense that too, of being open and transparent with that. Because as you and I spoke about before we even started shooting, is just so many people get caught up in what they think they see, or what they think who they think you are, or what they perceive based on all the digital platforms and our websites and what they read about you. But at the core of it is always a person that is trying and striving and hoping to continue to do something more. So for all that you have going on, a lot of tremendous things, can you just share with our listeners where they can follow you, what you're doing, you know, what's next for you, I should say, just so they can keep up with all that you've got going on as well?
Great. Thanks, Renee. I really do think there's a lot of image maintenance with athletes. And also, there's a lot of people are hurting and there's struggles. If you're not getting playing time, or you got cut from the team, or your career ended and you don't know what's next, you put too much pressure on yourself. And, I've had 2 family members that have taken their lives, and it's brutal. And there's a lot of people who are hurting underneath and don't know where to turn. And I just want to say there's a lot of help. There's a lot of resources. And you are loved. You are loved from above. You are loved by so many people so deeply, and there's hope. There's a way out. There's comfort. There is professional help. There's no shame in seeing a counselor. So I just want to reach out to people who are hurting. And my website that we built during COVID, jessebradley.org, you can go there. There's some free resources on hope. I talk about my own experience from losing so much, through that illness, and then rebuilding my life. And what are, the 7 building blocks of hope? What is this practical roadmap? And there's also marriage video series there, because so many marriages have been so strained during COVID. And so just trying to provide content. It's all free. None of it's for purchase. I just want to be there in a way that's practical. There's discussion questions on some of it, but those resources are there on jessebradley.org. And anytime you're in Seattle, definitely come to a Sounders game, or our church, graceinauburn.com, Grace Community Church. We have a great time every weekend, 3 services. So you can join us live streaming too.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jesse. And even it's great to see now, I'm sure as you guys are working through in the churches, of being able to get back and be in person, being able to now worship together. It's, things are slowly opening up. I know it's still scary, but we're slowly navigating through. So I really do appreciate you taking time to join us. And again, for those that are tuning in, that's jessebradley.org for his website. And then you are on Facebook or Instagram and Twitter as well. You might be on Facebook too, actually, but on Instagram and Twitter as well, so that people can always check in. And I will tell you guys, Jesse is very responsive. So if you ever need to reach out, definitely do so. And I appreciate you for taking time to drop by Beyond the Headlines to share some insights around your journey, your career in soccer, your career after soccer, and all the great things that you have going on. So thank you so much, Jesse, for taking time to join us here on Beyond the Headlines.
Renee, I really enjoyed it. You do such a great job just guiding conversations. Like, you're intelligent, articulate, you're a great communicator, and you just bring a lot of freedom. Like, it's just fun to talk about different stuff. So thank you.
Jesse, I need to bring you back to the East Coast, because you are just giving me all these compliments, and I love it. I love the encouraging words that you were saying. So thank you so much.
Not too many of us were doing everything you're doing at that age. So you're knocking out of the park. Just keep going, Renee.
Thank you, Jesse. Thank you so much. All the best to you as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And then for everybody that is tuning in, unfortunately, we were going to have a Spill in the Beans segment, but life gets hectic sometimes. And Michaela Williams will be joining us on our next episode of Beyond the Headlines, or a future episode, I should say, to be able to talk through what's going on in the world. But I just want to remind you, as always, to be sure to follow the show. We are everywhere. We are on Facebook. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We are on streaming platforms, and we're bringing you live episodes each week. I was away on vacation last week. Sorry. But we are back and getting at it to be able to bring you content each week live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. So hit that subscribe button so you can keep up with all the content we have going on, and to be a part of conversations like this, because Thursday, we also have another great guest, another former professional soccer player. Something about soccer. It's almost like I played. It's a joke. But we will be having Harry Forrester, a professional soccer player, who is going to be joining us to talk about his career, as well as also what he's doing now in coaching and training and life after soccer. So I really just appreciate you guys so much for taking time, as always, to join us live on Beyond the Headlines, to be able to tune into these conversations. Jesse Bradley, awesome person as a player, as a goalkeeper at the professional level, but also as a pastor and someone that is giving back. So I hope you guys have a tremendous rest of your day. Hopefully you continue to aspire to work towards whatever goals you are seeking. And hopefully today's conversation also helps motivate you in some way to keep going, to keep striving, to, as Jesse said, wherever you are, be present, be mindful of that, so you can keep working and moving forward. But thank you all so much. We'll see you back here Thursday. That is 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, so a little bit later. Hopefully it's not past some of your bedtimes, as we're joined by Harry Forrester here on Beyond the Headlines with Renee Washington. So for me, your host, Renee, have a great rest of your day, your evening, and I'll see you for more here next time. All right. Thank you guys so much. Have a good one.
Only on Beyond the Headlines. This is Beyond the Headlines. Only on Beyond the Headlines. This is Beyond the Headlines.